It's on. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Good morning, everybody. I'm Evelyn Thoren. I am your host for the Dawn Patrol for the next, what would you say, 56 minutes? Yeah, and Sam Chase is with me. Bob Hoey isn't with us this morning, so we wish him well. And he's got a long list of things that he has choices of which to do in a day. Hopefully he's not sick. So anyway.
No, he's working.
Yeah, and so it was a little chilly on the way in this morning. Not as chilly as it has been.
That's March, though, up and down.
Yeah, well, the other day when I looked at the thermometer, we have one of those stations. So we have a little, what do you want to call it?
A weather station?
Yeah, sort of like that. Anyway, you know, it's outside, and then on the inside you get the digital review for it, and it was 68 degrees.
Yesterday.
Yes, or the day before. I think it was the day before. Absolutely gorgeous weather the past couple of days. Doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. But,
Oh, it's going to be gorgeous.
well, they said we were supposed to have snow, but there was no snow.
In the Worcester area, there was.
Well, it said flurries here and snow. We're supposed to get like a scant
We should
amount.
each get an electronic tomato.
A
And
what?
when the weather forecaster is wrong, you get to throw your electronic tomato at them.
That's funny.
Just think how good looking those little chicks would be on TV dancing around. Oh, it's going to snow. I hate to say it's going to snow.
They had snow.
And they're wrong. Tomato the next
They
day.
did have a dusting of snow at Channel 5 at the Needham station. They were talking about it
Oh, it's this morning?
Yeah, so
That's a little further south and west of us.
It was patchy.
Yeah.
Who's that? Cindy
Fitzgibbon.
Misgivings?
I don't watch any of that, and in the morning I just try to wake up,
I
so
think
I'm not into watching the television.
I think the weather is pretty good. I like the Channel 5 weather team the best. I mean, they first of all, they're not just broadcast meteorologists. They are all real they're all AMS certified meteorologists. So
Well, that doesn't mean that
they're
they've got...
real weather people.
Right, but
Yeah,
that
they-
doesn't mean that they have any better predictions than anybody else.
I understand that.
My father
Yeah.
used to have the best predictions, and he grew up on a farm. He would watch what the clouds were, and then
Yeah.
he'd say stuff, and then he'd watch what the first... I think it was the first snowstorm, how it went, where it went.
And you watch the animals.
And then, well, he didn't, because we were in a city. There weren't that many to watch.
Watch the dog, the cat, mice.
Well, anyway, he would, look outside and be able to say that. But what was interesting was, and it seems to be true, but it probably is because of the jet stream and the way in which once you have a certain flow across the country, it usually stays that way. The line of, ice and snow or rain and snow usually doesn't fluctuate that much, and he would be able to predict that.
Yeah, the jet stream.
Way before he understood anything about, how weather is today and everybody looking at it.
Plus, he was your dad, and you looked up
There
to
you
him,
go.
and you loved the
Well,
guy.
he was, but
He
he,
can
but
do
he
no
was
wrong.
But he
That's
taught us
exactly
all
right.
of that stuff that he knew, from the farm. Now, he
I know,
left.
your dad was better than my dad. I heard it before, yep. Better
Well,
than
I don't-
Sam's dad. Sam's dad doesn't have a prayer. Your dad
No,
was
I'm
the
not even.
best.
I'm not even going to get into the
Yeah, but
conversation.
your father was smart. He was a lawyer, and he understood things, and he was very straightforward. So each of us has something that
your father was
usually
better.
are good attributes in that. But
I'll tell you one thing. My father really knew a lot about was the astrology, the stars. I mean, it used to drive me crazy when I was a kid. We'd be outside in the wintertime, nice clear night, and my father would say, "Well, there's Cassiopeia," and I'd look up and I'd say, "What? I can't see it." And he could actually see all the constellations and point them out. I mean, I think finally I was able to see the Big Dipper, which is I think the easiest one. But he could,
the little one I thought was the
he
easiest
could,
one.
He could see Orion, he could see Cassiopeia, he
Sam.
could see Leo, and I'd say...
And now we have apps for that on our phone.
I'd say, what? I could never see those things. And the poor man was trying to, he was very frustrated with
I
me.
used to just lie to my kids.
Yeah, oh, did you?
Can't you see the space shuttle? It's right there.
No, my father could actually
Look,
make
you
out the
can see it.
constellations.
And they'd be up there looking for the space shuttle going over.
To this day, Really, about the only thing I can see is Venus because it's so bright. Okay, I can find Venus usually, but anything beyond that,
the moon's
nope,
easy.
I can't.
The
I
moon-
Yeah,
can't
the
see
moon
it.
is easy.
No,
A little bright, very interesting. And then my grandmother had, my father's
Yep.
mother had, because they grew up on the farm, there was all kinds of things that they would say, and today scientifically, it's proven.
you
But
read the Farmer's Almanac.
I don't know what they did. All I know is, I don't even know if they could afford it.
We used to
You know,
get
she
it.
would say, you know, you plant on the increase of the moon, you don't plant on the decrease, you get married on the increase of the moon, and then she'd have all these stories about people that didn't. So I remember when I had graduated from college and I was going to be, no, maybe it was later than that, but anyway, she visited us because they lived in northern Indiana, and she would visit and that, but I never really got to know her very much because we really didn't live that close. So when Nixon was, resigned and all that stuff, she had visited us that summer, and I think it was the second or third summer that I taught school. But anyway, I asked questions. I didn't ask enough, and it was funny I should be talking about this because early this morning, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about the different things that I never really asked her about versus my other grandmother that only lived 10 minutes away. And that my kids aren't asking me anything about how it was.
That's because they know everything.
Well, it could be that, or they're not interested, or, in their age bracket, they just don't have any touch.
You always regret, when you get to be our age, you always regret that you didn't spend more time with your parents finding out about their historical
I won't have any
and
regrets
experience.
with regard to that.
Yeah, no, my father and I were pretty close and we talked
Yeah.
a lot, but I know a lot of people who say, gee, I wish I had listened a little more, or, that's just the way it is. I mean,
Right, well, I don't have that because we would go visit them at least once a week and have dinner or lunch or whatever it might be. And then when we moved to Chelmsford way back, they'd come up, they'd spend a weekend, 3 or 4 days.
What are you
and
talking about now, Viv?
visiting
Grandparents.
parents.
parents and grandparents.
Grandparents was a little different because at the time, because of age, I didn't drive. So you couldn't drive anywhere, couldn't fly anywhere. It was a little different. So it's
I
kind
was
of
lucky.
interesting.
Mine always lived right around town. They lived
Well,
close
you
by.
were lucky.
Well-
You were very lucky to have your grandparents that close.
Well, Glenn's grandparents were that close too. They were just down the street. 2 streets.
Yeah, very,
Yeah,
One-
but that's
one-
his side. We got to get rid of those.
very
crazy people.
fortunate.
Right. And so, he had a chance to talk to them, but so did I
They're crazy.
at the time and it was interesting to ask all the different kinds of questions and their perspective on things. So, but we never know what we're going to talk about. We want to make sure that people understand that it's not a scripted show. It is not edited. It is live. We have no 30-second delay. So we all have to be very careful about what we say on the show. And our opinions are pretty much our own, or it could be somebody else's opinion, but it's not the opinion or the positions of the TV programs and or media that does broadcast these City Life and the Dawn Patrol. So just so people know that, it's like a disclaimer.
I'll have to tell you, though, this is a live show, and that's good. I do a show on cable TV, and it's taped, and we were talking about it the other day in the studio, and I don't think I'd ever heard this term before, which I guess it's a common term. The producer talked about live on tape, and I said, well... I guess I know what that means. But
it means they're not editing it.
But yeah, okay, yes, exactly. So, but to me, it's either live or it's on tape. But he was explaining what you just said.
Right, live on tape.
And I started to think. So I've done the show now for about 5 years. And he was telling me how many shows we had done, and it's 140, I think. I have no idea because I don't keep track of that. I don't care.
Just
okay.
do the math.
Yeah, well, I don't. I don't care. I don't know. And I know they're keeping track of it, so why should I? But I mean, in all that time, we've only had to stop the taping one time. Okay, which so for all intents and purposes, when we tape our show, it really is kind of a live thing because it's never stopped. And, we've made mistakes and stuff, but we just keep going, right? And, we had to stop once because of it was a production problem, we got 5 minutes into the show, and then Velo said, "Oop, sorry, we have to start over again," because they did something wrong in the control booth.
Stuff happens.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty good. We've only had, in all that time, we've only had one snafu there.
We do it. We snafu all the time in live.
Yeah,
Forgot to put the mics on. I did
but
this.
little tiny mistakes. I'm not, and I could. I mean, because it's my show. If I don't like the way it's going, I could say stop, and they would stop the tape, and we'd start again. But no, don't do that. I mean, unless it's something really catastrophic, right? But But this is a live show, so if we screw up, folks,
which means you can call us.
You're going to see it.
Yes, and you can call us. You can see that you can call 978-808-8200. It's on the bottom of the screen.
Or you can call Sam's cell phone.
Well,
Everyone's,
people
if you know
have
the
mine,
number.
Call me
and they
and-
can text us.
And you can text us.
Call me,
Oh,
I
yeah.
won't answer
And
probably.
a lot of ways in which to communicate, which is great. But we were talking about magazines when we first,
Yes.
before we went on the air.
Talking about
We don't need to
dirty-
go into details.
Dirty magazines.
Well, and there's all kinds of different ones that are out there. As I'm
Not
going,
anymore.
Well, some of them are digital now.
well, true, because they
Yeah.
can't, it's cheaper to do it that way.
sure.
Higher profit margin, less production issues.
No one will pay. They won't pay for a book. Remember going to the airport when I was a kid, and you go to the news store and you go buy Newsweek or Life, or you go
Yeah.
buy some book.
Yeah,
can
well, you
still
go
do
buy
it.
something.
You can still do that.
But one of the things that, well, actually, there's a lot of things, so it isn't just one. But anyway, when the kids were little, my mother gave them a subscription to National Geographic. There are
that's
National
good.
Geographic magazines that are collectible.
I used to love to read National
If anybody
Geographic.
knows anything about that, I'd appreciate having a little bit of
It
more
would go
insight.
around the room if there was a naked woman in National
Oh,
Geographic.
there always was.
Oh, there's always,
They
it's all
tell
the
you.
natives.
They always had pictures of the
Johnny, go over it.
natives,
It's
yeah.
page 88.
88.
Page 88.
So that was one of the magazines. Glenn subscribed to like Popular Mechanics.
Yep.
And he had Motor Trend.
Yeah, that was a good one.
He had Mustang 5.0, different ones like that. And
He's got a Mustang collection, doesn't he have a bunch of Mustangs?
Well, he has one
No.
Mustang. He has one vehicle.
He has one.
That's a Mustang.
yeah.
Oh, you only let him have one.
Well,
How
he has,
many vehicles do you want me to
he
have?
has other vehicles that are not
Oh,
Mustangs.
I
just paid the excise
got a
tax.
brother-in-law has a lift in his garage to keep his car up high, and the other one down below.
I'd like to have a lift. It would be
two-
great.
Where would you put it?
Well, my garage,
He's got
the
a
height of my
Corvette on
garage
top
is
and a
12 feet.
Camaro on the
Oh, you
bottom.
14
could.
feet.
Yeah, you could do it.
Yeah, I don't have a standard size garage. It's got a very high ceiling, so I could put a lift in it if I wanted to. I don't. It would, the hydraulic.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
they're not cheap. The good
Nothing
ones.
is.
The good ones aren't
Yeah,
cheap.
nothing is.
You can't buy a cheap one.
Yeah, you have to pay
silly.
You have to pay 15,000 at minimum for a decent one.
But I shouldn't give him any ideas.
No.
So,
Why not? He's already thought about it.
He
well,
probably has.
and I don't even know where he'd,
You want
he'd put
that
it.
new car, you let him get that lift.
Well, I told him that if he wants to buy any more vehicles, he's got to get rid of one. Because we have quite a
good.
number.
I
That's-
have this really good idea, honey.
That's a good
Get
idea.
a lift, and I get a new car.
At some point, I will, and I'm getting closer to getting one because, and I'll speak to this briefly in the next hour because some people will join us from 7 to 8. So my mother did finally find a space in the Merrimack Valley, and so we'll be moving her up there within the next 5 or 6 days. She doesn't know it yet.
Wonderful.
So she'll be closer. All the kids are, happy about that.
Do it when she's asleep,
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
and then she'll wake up in
Do
a
it-
new place.
Do a transport, and then we
Yeah.
wouldn't have to have
Nah,
any discussion on the
Evelyn
way.
treats her mother like a human being.
So, so the reason I've kept my 2008 Odyssey is because it's the only vehicle I have she can kind of slide in and slide out of. And even Glenn's Acura, I think it's his Acura, she had a difficult time trying to get in that. I just think he wasn't sure about how to put her in at one time. I said, forget it.
No.
Even I have trouble getting in and out of it.
Yeah, some vehicles it's harder to get in and out of.
Right, and then you got SUVs, and I'm certainly not going to put her in my father's car. Too many memories, and I really don't want to listen to it. So I have 261,000 miles on my Odyssey. The engine runs great. We'll see how everything
Keep
else
it.
goes. Small, repairs here and there.
Go.
The body's beginning to go on it.
Yeah.
Like the rest of us, the body's beginning to go.
On my Chevy, I've got a 2009 Impala, and I've got some rust. But you know what?
It is what it is.
I'm going to keep the thing. I'll fix it this spring.
Yeah,
you know.
Glenn said that there's a hole in the wheel well,
Yeah.
and that's why we get some water in the back.
Yeah, so that could be.
Excuse me. And
With the price of new vehicles, let me tell you something. If you have a car that's safe and you like, fix it. I mean, unless you want a new vehicle. I don't, because
some people don't know.
I don't like the new cars. I don't want a new car. I like the older technology, and I will keep fixing the car
Well, I wish I had my 72
for
with
as
no
long
covers.
as I'm gonna, because I
Sam, take a
don't
ride
like.
in a new Silverado.
No,
Nice
no.
stuff.
No, there's too many things that can go wrong.
My,
It's all
my
electronic.
daughter has newer cars, and exactly, I don't like them.
Now, Sam, let me
Too
ask
much
you this
technology.
But I'm going to have to make a decision at some
Too
point.
much
question. I'll ask
technology.
Evelyn the same question.
Okay.
When you put your car in reverse, do you look at the radio for the backup cam?
You asked Sam first?
Which, are you asking me?
Yeah, first.
I don't have a backup in my car.
I know you don't. Do you look at the radio and imagine you have one?
No.
Evelyn, do you?
No, I have a backup camera in my van.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yes.
It's a one-inch screen, black and white?
No, it's this big.
Wow.
My wife's,
And it's in better, and you can see
Yeah.
better out of that than the ones that Glenn has in the newer vehicles.
my
'Cause
wife's
it's on that screen. Sorry
Honda
about that.
Pilot has backup, and I never look at it. I mean, I drove 55 years without the thing,
Oh,
okay?
it's
So, I
nice.
mean, no, I don't need it.
You can back right up to a wall like...
Yes, I can.
Well,
I was taught to use the mirrors, okay? I don't need the backup screen.
Well, I don't either,
Don't
I
use
but-
it.
love the backup cam.
Don't use it.
So some of the newer vehicles, if you get too close, then the seat vibrates.
Really?
Yep.
Yes.
Did not know that.
And then the side mirrors, if you're close, it blinks yellow
Well,
on the side so that you know that you're within
I
whatever
like-
the range might be. But as far as that backup camera goes, I will use the backup camera only to
back
double
up.
check. Because there is a blind spot, and trying to turn around hurts my neck quite
Well,
a bit.
that's the other thing, and that's one reason you have the backup camera, because the older cars, the design, there were no blind spots. Like, I have my 1965 Dodge Dart, and I can sit in the driver's seat, and I can see all four corners of the car through the windows. You can't do that in the new cars, and that's why they give you the backup camera.
Yeah, well, I have a van, so, there's a whole lot of space.
Yeah, van is, if you see, in the van, you can see the four
Right,
corners of the
but
car.
because, like, say,
Right.
for instance, this morning, okay, I used the backup camera. I went to the back of I backed up to the edge of the driveway. I looked left and right. I didn't, because we have a lot of people that walk their dogs early. And then I looked in the backup camera, and I didn't see anybody, and then I backed up slow, because there are blind spots. And so I use it just for, usually for safety purposes, but not for the utmost purpose of backing up.
If you've got it, use it, okay? And I'm not against that, and to say...
Yeah, but don't use it solely, because you
But
can't always
no,
rely on
you
it.
can't. And I don't do it. I don't generally look at it in my wife's car because I don't drive her car often enough. Okay, to have gotten into the habit of using the thing. I suppose if I drove her car every day, I probably would use it. Okay, but I
Excuse
just
me?
haven't. I don't. No, I just don't. I don't care for the. I don't care for the. All the technology in the new cars. It's just, and God help you if any of that electronic stuff goes. You better.
Well, one of the
you're
things
going to
that I-
need a second mortgage to fix that car.
Well, I
okay?
did learn something a couple of weeks ago
Yeah.
about a backup camera. It is connected to your transmission. electronically. So when Glenn was having trouble with the transmission and the backup camera didn't work,
Yeah,
he
when
knew,
you shift into reverse, it turns on.
yes.
Right.
And maybe a lot of people don't realize that, but electronically it is connected
Yep.
to the transmission. So I did learn that. I'm always learning something, which is kind of interesting. But getting back to those magazines, we used to have Vogue magazine. I mean, John mentioned Cosmopolitan.
Ladies' Home Journal.
Yep. And then I just threw a whole pile of Women's Day magazines. You had House Beautiful, Home and Garden, or House and Garden.
I think it was House and Garden, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Now they are online, and they do have articles.
do-
And
they
it shows,
still
it
have
comes
them?
across Google.
Okay.
So there's a lot of interesting things. But what was interesting was I was going to throw a whole box of magazines away.
That would have been
These-
a good thing.
These are like Consumer Reports,
Yep.
and they had to do with some vehicles. So I pull one out.
A 1966 refrigerator.
It doesn't
Everyone's
matter.
got the specs on that.
Anyway, so I took my telephone, and there's an app called Lens, Lens. It's free. You can download it, and when you tap it, and the camera comes up. You center whatever it is you want to know about, like a magazine, a bottle of water, the clock that's sitting there.
Oh, and you pointed at the item?
And you point it at the item, and
Okay.
you tap it as if you're going to take a picture. And then what it does is it searches whatever the venues are that it's attached to. And when you scroll down, it matches it to something that may be on eBay, Etsy, any number of locations. It will tell you what it is, and it will tell you how much it is on those locations. Sometimes it doesn't, because everything is limited, but most of the time it does. So I took this magazine, and I thought, why not? Take a picture of it, see if it's worth anything.
Give it a try.
I did. $20. I went on eBay. You've got to be kidding me. This is one magazine in a box that if I stacked up the magazines, it's this big. And the question is it worth it for me to try to figure out how to get rid of it that way, or just put it in recycling? So right now it's sitting.
Put it on
they're all-
eBay.
Yeah, but that's a lot of work.
Yeah,
So,
it is.
I haven't got that far yet, and I've done that with a number of magazines. I came across several books that I have that were copyrighted in the late 1800s. Some of those come up and some of them don't. It's very interesting to use that particular app, and I tell that to everybody so that if they're going to throw something away, at least they know what it is they're throwing away. When I say throwing away, it doesn't always mean in the trash. It could mean that you're going to send it to Savers, depending upon what it might be. You got the Wish Project, you got Household Goods, you've got all kinds of places that you can donate items without putting them in the trash. And but there's a lot of stuff that you can recycle, and you should check your local listings in your cities and towns to find out what you can and
Well,
can't,
the
because
old
everybody's
saying
different.
is, my junk is someone else's treasure, right? So
Well,
you-
I don't know. I
so
made
you
a
never
comment
know.
about 78 records.
Oh, yeah,
and-
there's a market for that.
And when and I have my grandmother's Victrola. I have a tabletop one that came from Glenn's grandmother. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with all these things, but if I had the big house I always thought I was going to have, then I would have put out all the antique stuff and you could have used it. But so far that isn't going to happen, and at my age I don't think I'm going to hold my breath with regard to that, using that phrase.
Some people would say that your house is rather large.
No, I agree with that, but not the kind I was looking for. The old Victorians, like this house.
Okay, the
The house.
turn of the century house, 1900.
Yeah, a Victorian or something along those lines, where you've got the high ceilings and the beautiful chandeliers, or you can replace them. But where we have this studio, it's not a TV studio in some building someplace, or LTC, or even Chelmsford. This is in a living room, and it is a very beautiful home.
In the old days, this would
In Lowell.
have been called the parlor, right, John?
The parlor.
Yeah.
So, anyway, if
believe it or
anybody
not,
has
they used
old
to-
magazines out there, I'd be interested to
Now, that's
hear.
that's a New England term. You won't find that term used in other parts of the country.
A parlor?
Parlor, right?
I thought that you had something like that out in the West.
Yeah.
There's also,
From the audience, a car can have all the bells and whistles and extra things,
Yeah, it's-
but if your roads are horrible, then it doesn't matter. Oh, it's so,
And that's true.
Sam, what is your favorite? You don't have a new car, so you wouldn't know. Sam's car, he has like reins on it, on the steering wheel. He has to pull the reins to turn the wheel.
It's
So, Evelyn,
pretty close, yeah.
what's the favorite option on a car for you?
Favorite option?
Heated seats.
Okay. Sam, can you think of, I know you haven't had one, you have a horse, but
If you had a choice.
Well,
Glenn likes
1966
the
Dodge Dart.
heated steering wheel.
okay, yeah, okay, so almost everything that, when Evelyn and I were learning how to drive, everything that's on a car now was optional, like an automatic transmission, power
Yeah.
steering, power brakes. That's, kids today, they don't even know what I'm talking about, because that stuff is standard now on every car.
A right-hand mirror.
So,
Yeah.
well, a left-hand mirror on my 65 Dart was optional,
Yep.
okay? The heater was optional, okay?
Radio was.
Ra- oh, yeah.
2025, what's your
Radio.
favorite option?
Okay, so
You won the lottery and you gotta buy a new car.
I would say I'll go with the heated seats. My wife's Honda has the heated seats, and that is nice.
It helps with arthritis.
Yeah.
I say the heated seats, but the heated steering wheel.
Yeah,
Now,
Glenn likes
I
that.
didn't
You have a
even
time.
know until a week ago that there was such a thing as a heated steering wheel, and I was in a friend's car.
Glenn has one.
I did not know that. Well,
Yeah, in
she
the Tahoe.
has a the heck is it? It's the Toyota SUV. What's it called? I forget. But anyway,
Glenn would know all the
yeah,
names, and I
the,
don't.
Venza?
no,
No, that's something.
no,
Is a Highlander a Toyota?
Highlander. That's it. It's a Highlander. She has a new Highlander. It's a hybrid. Nice vehicle, and she has the heated steering wheel. I didn't even know there was such a thing. So I thought that was pretty interesting, you know. If you have gloves, I guess you don't need it, but.
It's hard to drive with gloves.
Yeah, it is.
It's like kind of
It
drive
is.
with boots.
Well, when
can
you
you
get
do that?
in a vehicle that does not have a heated steering wheel, you need gloves.
I think so. I agree with you.
Leather gloves, leather-like gloves are the best.
But the heated seats are good. The only thing, at least in the Pilot, now maybe the newer cars are better, it does take a while for those things to heat up, so if it's a short trip, you're not going to get the benefit of the heated seat. So,
But if you have remote start,
they are nice.
that helps.
They are nice.
So some of the things that we can talk about in the next hour, we have,
Heated seats.
because we can get Glenn's opinion on it, the fact that Healy is doubling down on some of the towns not complying with the new housing laws. That was an article that was out there.
MBTA
Yes,
and ADUs.
yep, and ADUs. We're not going to talk about the person that has an issue in Chelmsford.
A good, honest mechanic is the most important thing when
Yes.
it comes to cars.
Agreed.
Know the extended warranty. If you're going to buy a car, you need Car Shield. You need to have the extended warranty.
I think a car manufacturer, it's really funny that they all sell the extended warranties, because what they're telling you is our car is going to break down, okay? So.
Yeah, but that's like house insurance.
Yeah.
You know, they're betting on the
Some
fact
people
that
don't get
that
it.
things
Right.
aren't going to happen, so that they have to pay up. And
I
then
have
when they do, they
never,
raise your
I've never had an
premiums.
extended warranty, and I can tell you that I am several $1,000s ahead of the game because
Well,
of it. So
You have never had to pay $1,500 to get your gas gauge fixed.
I would never do that.
We do have a mechanic that's a friend of the family. We don't necessarily get any breaks, but he is very good and reasonable.
Yep.
One of my children was going to, took the one vehicle to the dealer and had it evaluated because there was some noises and stuff. They gave him a $1,500 estimate on what was wrong, took it to our mechanic, and I think his charge was $400. So, you know, Glenn was making all kinds of comments. I said, the dealership has a lot of overhead. That's why they're charging so much. And people that don't know anything about cars, or they're thinking that the dealership knows everything about a car, are very trusting, and they're going to spend the $1,500.
Well, there are dealers and there are dealers too.
Well, that's true.
yeah,
And then
so-
they make up stuff as they go along, because it's like, oh, well, you know, this might break, so we got to do this, we got to do
And
that.
generally speaking, a dealership, a reputable one that's been around for a long time, they're going to use factory parts. is. And there is a difference.
They lie too, Sam.
A lot of them do.
Well, that's what we
but
just
th-
said.
But there are some honest ones.
Right.
And-
Name some.
Oh, a friend of mine who's been a dealer for, well, it's been in the family for, 80, 90 years, in West Concord. He's as honest as the day is long, okay? And,
Probably why he's still around.
yep, and, yeah, I mean, they've been in business forever. The thing is that, a lot of times you'll go, and I'll give you an example without mentioning the business, okay? But a mechanic in Chelmsford, okay? Years ago, I had an issue with my Camry, and it was had to have the thing fixed. And I said, while you're in there, replace the water pump. Well, it's not broken, yeah, but the car has 100,000 miles on it. You've torn it down to that point. You might as well put in a new water pump because it'll be a lot cheaper to do it while you've got the engine apart. So they put in a new water pump, and I had problems with it, and
They put
I took it to
a cheap Chinese
They
water,
did.
water
They
pump.
did. They did. That's exactly right.
Instead of going to the junkyard,
I
get a
took
used
it.
one.
I took it. I took it to the. I took it to the Toyota dealer, and I had him look at it, and he said, "Who put this pump in?" You know, and I said, "Well, the local guy." And he said, "Well," he said, "this is a cheap aftermarket unit, and that's why it doesn't work." He said, "And you know," he says, "we could put in a cheap aftermarket unit." He said, "But we don't do that because we want to fix the thing and we don't want to see it again." Okay?
Sam,
Yeah, so that was that.
everybody, including plumbers,
Mm-hmm.
honest to God, I'm not going to say the guy's name because his family lives in town, but he'd come into the funeral home and say, "Oh my God, who put those pipes in like that?" I said, "You did."
Oh.
Oh, yeah, oh.
Oh. He was the only plumber we ever had.
There
Who
you
put
go.
that mess in? Oh,
Who did
that's
that?
terrible.
There's all kinds of assessments, but you really should know something about whatever it is you're having repaired
Yes.
and not rely on anybody. And the other thing is, if you're having something that you think is expensive, you should get at least 3
Yep.
companies in for bids so that you can have a better understanding of it. It's your money. You have to work for it. Well, generally speaking, people do have to work for their money, but you want to make sure you get the best bang for your buck. And you know, I have
Well,
you know,
there's a difference between cheaping out and being cheap and getting good value. But you're right.
Yeah,
I mean,
fly
yeah.
Spirit. If you want to ruin your vacation, fly Spirit.
well, I mean, when we talk about
may not get there.
that analysis, it used to be that, you know, one of my mother's things was, well, people from Scotland are cheap. No, they're frugal. There's all kinds of little things, ethnically speaking, that you have, and I can say that because I am not cheap, but frugal. And also, you know, part from Scotland. My grandfather came from Scotland. My grandmother on one side came from England. I had one. I have green on.
A distinction without a difference.
I have one because her name was Grady. And then my father's father is, I mean, I'm the 9th generation
They're
from
all
that
the
side in this country.
They're all the same. The Irish, the English, they're all the same people. They're all Celts, okay? But you can't tell them that.
No, because, well, it's kind of like with the clans.
Oh,
You know, one's
absolutely.
better than the other,
Yeah.
which
They're
is very
Western
interesting.
European. One of my good friends, John Zimini, he's a mover and shaker drinking.
John Zimini, how's
John
John?
likes to brag, drink, it's cheap. And I said, John, you should use, like, frugal.
Right.
He says, I'm not wasting any letters. We are cheap.
Yeah, that's funny.
Well, anyway, so St.
So,
Patrick's
you
Day
got
is
your
coming
green
up.
on- How are you celebrating St. Patrick's month?
The month?
The month?
I never celebrate it.
It's not St. Patrick's Day. You got green on. So what's
Well, that's because I'm not going to be here on St. Patrick's Day. So I thought that I would wear green today.
That's why I'm wearing green.
Glenn won't wear green.
you have
because,
green there? Sam? Is one of
Yeah,
those
on-
stripes
Yes.
is
on the
green?
shirt.
Yep,
On the
he
shirt.
has a green plaid shirt.
That's Yankee cheap. You're being Yankee cheap, Sam, with that.
That's okay.
green.
Well, I bought this specifically to wear on the Thursday, either when it is or before St.
I
Patrick's
do have a
Day.
green tie.
So do you
for
go
St.
get,
Patrick's.
corned
I don't
beef
go
and
get
cam-
anything. I don't do any corned
Sam,
beef
you
and
go get
cabbage. It's too
Kim-
much
Yes,
salt.
we have corned beef and cabbage.
Does Candy make it, or do you go out and get it?
No, we do it in the crock pot.
Okay, cool. Because I'm gonna go to either,
Oh, I have to have my corned beef and cabbage.
It's too salty.
Oh, I love it.
oh, it's wonderful.
I love it.
And the only thing is,
My mother
you
used to
should not
make
be in an elevator any,
No,
or
right.
around people
Exactly.
afterwards.
Well, that's the cabbage. The
Yeah,
I
you're
don't
right.
mind having
Cabbage-
cabbage. I did
cabbage is
buy a head of
gassy.
cabbage, but I thought I'd with the cabbage. I really love coleslaw. I could just kind of like live on that. So I'm going
Well-
to make myself some coleslaw, and then
Cabbage is a great vegetable, you know that.
Yes, I do.
Right, and it's great, and my doctor told me, because I had kidney stones, he said, that's the best thing you can eat for kidney stones.
Oh, well, then I should
And-
feed Glenn that all the time.
Yeah, so I've always eaten coleslaw and I love cooked cabbage. So, yeah, corned beef and cabbage, it's the only way to go.
I don't remember the last time I had it.
But it has to be boiled. I had it years ago, we went to
Oh, no,
somebody's.
you can't bake it.
Well, we went to this friend's house, and they had the corned beef, and it was,
It's too salty when you bake it.
they
You gotta
baked it in
pull
the oven,
The salt out. It's
and it
cured.
was terrible.
Yeah, and it would, and also
And it
would
was
be
like
tough.
shoe leather,
Yeah.
right? It was awful. And I said, no, I said, you're supposed to, this is a boiled dinner. You're supposed to boil it, right?
Speaking of Ireland,
Rosie O'Donnell.
Rosie O'Donnell moved out of the country, one down and many more to go.
You know what? I saw that yesterday on a news clip, and she's lost a lot of weight. Did you
Yes.
know that?
Yes.
In fact, if they hadn't said,
Now she can get on the plane.
how did she get on the plane?
Now she can get on the
Oh,
plane.
now she can. Well, the thing is, if they hadn't said it was Rosie O'Donnell, I would not have recognized her. I mean, she's really lost a lot of weight, and of course, she looks a lot older than, you know.
Well,
but
the other thing is, it can
I'll give her credit though. I mean, how many of these celebrities over the last 40 years
Ever
have,
did what they
have
said they were
said,
gonna do?
well, if so and so is elected, I'm moving out. Well,
Most of them don't.
she actually did. So
Well,
we'll,
there's
gi- we'll
another
give
one
her
that did
we'll,
too.
we'll give her credit.
She didn't move the first time.
No, but we'll have to give her some credit. She actually
Oprah, where's Oprah? Oprah going to Canada?
did. She's not going anywhere.
when you have millions and billions of dollars,
Doesn't matter.
you don't need to go anywhere. It's when you don't,
Right.
or if you have no morals or principles. But as far as leaving the country or not leaving the country, if you go to another country, most of the time the cost of living, depends on where you go, is a lot less. That's because that country isn't giving the world all the money that they make in the country. That's part of it. I mean, we're giving money away left and right, and we can talk about this in the next hour because Glenn always has his opinion about it, and so do I. In that there's billions of dollars worth the waste. We could easily talk about this Department of Education. I mean, if they're not affecting the curriculum, they're not affecting test scores,
They're
why do
not.
we have it? And it wasn't like it was always there. It was created under Jimmy Carter.
1978, and it was done as a payback to the teachers. union.
Yeah.
It was a
So-
political thing.
Right,
That's why
so if
done.
it was political to begin with, it can be political to end
Right,
it.
right.
As far as I'm concerned, all that money, I'm listening to different commentaries about it, and depending upon what it is that other people bring up to try to support it, those areas can be supported in other areas in the government.
Comment from the audience, it's only a matter of time before they get sick of her and send her back.
Well, that's if she starts talking, if she opens her mouth. Other than that,
Well, if she doesn't get a microphone, she'll come back too.
Well, that's true.
well, it depends on
If
the ego of
limelight
the
doesn't
individual.
go- they miss the limelight terribly.
Yes, they do.
Some do, some don't.
Oh, yes.
So,
Well, I listened again, and I know I'm a broken record. You want accurate information, don't watch the media, because you won't get it. Either right or left side, you won't get it. So I spent about 18 minutes yesterday listening to Secretary McMahon. She's the Secretary of
Education.
So I figured if anybody knows what's going on in their department, the head of the department's going to tell you. So I listened to her, and what she said was, she said, well, now look, the idea is that we're focusing on eliminating all of the bureaucratic and administrative, paper shuffling type stuff that we do in Washington. She says the actual funding that supports educational programs in the states is not going to be affected. So if Massachusetts, what I heard yesterday, and I guess it's true, I don't really know, but what I heard was that Massachusetts in the aggregate gets $2 billion a year from it didn't sound right to me, but that's what I heard, $2 billion a year in federal support. That's not going to change because that's a pass-through money that has nothing to do with the administrative operations of the education department in D.C. So the actual funding that's been allocated by Congress that goes to the states is not going to be cut. Okay, that's not what they're doing, all right? But that's not the way the media is reporting it.
No, I mean...
I know, big surprise, right?
Well, yeah, and what the Democrats are trying to do is to
Right.
create fear.
Of course,
This
of course.
question's for you, Evelyn. Any good corned beef hash recipe?
Oh,
No, because, see, I don't do corned beef.
yeah, we do corned beef hash.
So, because of
maybe
the salt...
Sam has some ideas.
Oh, I don't, my wife does.
No, it's the salt content.
But that's what
My
makes it good.
grandmother always made it, on the stove, and boiled it
Boiled it.
down and soaked it for days. And
So go to YouTube.
Yep.
yes.
YouTube is
Yep.
fantastic.
They'll tell you.
And
Yep.
once you access, on Facebook, once you access any recipe, they all pop up. And there's some interesting stuff that's in there. Corned beef and cabbage wasn't one of them, because it's usually a straightforward recipe. As far as a hash goes, all you do is take the leftover corned beef, you run it through
Meat
a
grinder.
food processor. I know that, if you cook it, you can do the egg on the top.
I don't care for the egg on the top.
I don't really...
But a lot of people do. They do like that. I'm not a...
And it was funny because when they talk about eggs, egg prices are coming down because they're not killing the chickens anymore, and gas is coming down, but you're not hearing anything about that. You only hear about what it is that's going to work for the opposing party. On the way in, only for about 3 minutes, you're listening to the analysis of the Democratic Party and how they're like spoiled children and they're throwing a fit because they didn't get their own way. And that's exactly what the analysis has been from many people and talk radio and television in the analysis of what happened at the, if you want to call State of the Union address or the message to Congress.
Joint address.
Yeah, so...
So if you want a nice corned beef cabbage recipe, look at all these puppies.
There
that
you go.
Have on
Take your pick.
YouTube.
Oh, yeah, you're going to have carrots.
You just go
Carrots,
on there.
potatoes, and boiled potatoes,
Look,
carrots.
this gal, she's so surprised what her husband cooked for her.
Oh, good for him.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be surprised.
Now, there you go. That looks good. I
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
So you can go
Well,
on
maybe that,
YouTube.
did you already buy your corned beef?
I don't think so.
Do you have to eat it on St.
No.
Patrick's Day?
No.
Because if we do dinner on Friday
As long
night,
as I get it sometime during
this
March.
weekend?
Well, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I should take a look and see what it is.
Why, are you
because-
coming over Friday?
Yeah.
See?
Because we're home.
First
as
I
far-
hear of it.
As far as I know,
Like my grandson says, Papa, they don't tell us anything.
as far as I know, we are. That's because I got to move my mother. I've got to move her.
Well, plus we've got a bunch of stuff we're doing this weekend, I think. I mean,
Well, see, Candy said that you're free Friday night. I says, oh, good. Menu later, because
but, Saturday
it's
and
just
Sunday,
overwhelming
we're-
how much stuff I have to do.
we're doing stuff Saturday and Sunday.
Yep, and my sister did fly up, if anybody wants to know. She did fly up, and
Good,
because
so she's going to help?
she's got to sign the papers and pay the bill. That's what she has to do. She has
Okay,
to sign
well,
her out, and
paying the
she's
bill
got to
is
sign her in,
Paying the bill is important.
and then she's got to write that first check.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, in the next hour, not this current one, Glenn's here.
Good.
And then in the next hour, what we'll do is I'll give a brief update and some new stuff that I learned, because if anybody's out there and you have yourself, your spouse, an aunt, an uncle, anybody, even a friend, if they're looking at getting into nursing care, long-range care, long-term care, whatever you might like to call it, skilled nursing facilities, you can pay $250 to $450 an hour for advice, or you can listen to me and get it for nothing. So sometimes listening to some of these shows, it
The
is
doctor
definitely
is in the
worthwhile.
house. As they
So,
say. That's what Warren Shaw used to say.
yeah. So anyway, as far as all of that goes, if you want, I can see if I can find corned beef tomorrow.
No,
and
no,
stick
don't,
it
no,
on.
no,
Well,
don't,
it will take 4 to 8 hours.
Don't
I have time
bother.
today. I'll talk to Candy and see if that's something she wants, because it's not something I normally eat, but if it goes in a crock pot, that's a fast dinner for me in comparison to how I usually cook. And not that we need to do recipes, but I made a creamed chicken soup. I have a friend of mine who is
Out of cream
terminally
and
ill.
chicken? No.
Is terminally ill.
Oh, that's too
and
bad.
some of the things that she can eat, really it should be pureed because of where the tumor is and all the other stuff that they can't deal with. So I had bought a deli chicken and deboned it, which means you take all the meat off, in case you don't understand that, and then you take all the bones and you put it in a saucepan or some kind of a pan, and you add water to it, so you cover the bones, and then you boil it down.
You make a stock.
Well, I can make a stock, but I normally don't add vegetables to this. However, because I had the onions, I had the carrots, and I had a couple of other things, I took all the peelings, I took all the outside of the
Potato?
no. I didn't use the peelings from potatoes. I threw those out for the birds. But from the onions, and yep, you're gonna sit in the middle, so we're gonna move around here.
Oh, I don't
a
have to
little.
move? Well,
No,
that's
isn't that neat?
that's unusual. Usually I'm moving. That's
I
fine.
kept the seat warm for you.
I'm sure it is.
You see that? It's the heated seats, right?
Yeah, I have them in my car.
We talked about that earlier, heated
I have
seats.
them in my car.
I'll
Yep.
finish and then we can talk about it again.
And I have a heated steering wheel. Oh, look,
Yes.
you're not even on TV anymore.
And as I said before,
He's gotta
I
adjust it.
did not know until last week that there were such things as heated steering wheels. I found that out.
Really? Oh, I love it.
Anita has, she's got a Highlander, and she has a heated steering wheel, and she and I were going, and she says, "Here, try this out." I said,
Isn't it great?
"Whoa, heated steering
Yeah,
wheel!"
The
Yeah,
Tahoe has a heated steering
Yeah.
wheel, and before I even move the car, I hit the steering wheel button in the winter.
Now, how quickly does it heat up?
So let me finish what I was saying.
Oh,
It'll only take
sorry.
another minute. So when I was doing that particular soup, the peelings that I had from the carrots, the outside of the onion that you don't use, that you can boil that down. It makes the soup darker, and then any of that stuff. And then what you do is then you strain it all off, so all you're left with is whatever the broth is.
Sounds like a lot of work to me.
Well, yeah, because you don't cook, and so.
Well, I do sometimes.
You chop up
Yeah.
the carrots and the onions and the celery, and now you have all the goodness of the chicken. But what I did was I put it in my blender so that I could get it all together, and then I added evaporated milk to it. It came up really good,
Maybe
among
John
other
wants
ones.
to do a cooking show sometime.
That's
No,
not a
but we
bad
always
idea.
talk about that, and in the next hour, then
I'm a
he'll.
consumer, not a creator.
Well, then we can do an eating show. How's that?
Would you like that?
Yeah.
I'll bring a bunch of stuff.
Eating show's better.
Bring the food in and we'll eat
Yeah,
it.
the
How's
old
that?
diner can bring in breakfast.
Well, we really don't need to do
Well,
that.
I remember it was a while back. Ellen brought stuff in. Remember, we were here and she brought in things for us to eat.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that was
well,
good.
Yeah, you had breakfast sandwiches.
That's what it was. Breakfast sandwiches, right? I remember.
So you had the croissants and you had the
Yep.
ham and cheese and egg and all that stuff, which I can make. Oh yeah, would be nice if you
Would
had.
be nice if you had a microphone. There you go. Juice him up there.
Oh, look.
Yes,
Yeah. Now you can be heard.
you're doing our job, but that's okay.
Hey, I
Technology.
get paid extra.
That's right. We're going to double your pay.
Yep, no tax on tips.
So in the next hour, for those that ask, John will tell you what I made for this morning, but we won't talk about it now.
Well,
But
I know.
anyway, if
We only
anybody
have this,
wants
so-
recipes, I mean, you did ask about the corned beef hash, but it's something I just don't do again. So, anyway, so we're going over to his house for dinner, but I'm cooking on Friday. So he sort of suggested I do corned beef and cabbage, which
No,
I
no,
haven't
I
done.
didn't. I didn't suggest that. You suggested it.
So I'll
She
check.
suggested that
Yeah.
you suggested that. So
No.
I know how this works.
And I would recommend against that. You know, do your traditional whatever it is you're going to do. So,
We talked about
Yeah.
old magazines.
Yep.
I'll give you some topics, Glenn, for the next 7 minutes. We talked about old magazines. Remember, you got the Popular Mechanics and the Mustang, if there's anything
Did you
with
ever
that.
get Boy's Life?
No.
I never did, but
I got
I
bored.
read it because it was in the library.
Okay, I got Boy's Life.
And I spent most of my life in the library in grade school, and and in high school, I wouldn't go home from high school, I'd just go to the library.
Yep, a good place to get your homework done.
It's
That's
also,
exactly right.
it's also quiet. You don't have any
Right,
interruptions.
exactly,
Yep.
exactly.
There was a term paper that I did. Do they still do term papers? There was a
Oh,
term
of
paper
course
that
they
I
do,
did
yeah.
in high school.
Of course not.
And we had competition. So senior year, we had a science fair. That was competition. So you could place, and you get a ribbon or you get a medal or something like that.
And we know Evelyn does not like competition.
Yeah,
No,
right.
shies
And
away from it.
then there was a senior history paper, which you also ended up with an English grade on it. So how you wrote it and that. And so you had to submit a draft to the teacher, and then they made suggestions, all kinds of stuff. And then the city historian, I'm from Quincy, so the Quincy city historian at the time in the late 60s then judged the history papers. So the history paper that I do, I'm talking about the library. So in Quincy, you have the Thomas Crane Public Library.
Is it still there?
Yes, still standing, and they've added to
Nice
it.
library.
And I haven't been in it a long time. I remember doing competition with myself and how many books could I read in 2 weeks when I was in grade school. We didn't buy books. You went to the library. Rarely did you get books for a gift. It cost money. We didn't have much. But that senior year, they had books that were from the early 1800s in one of their old book sections, and they had the card catalogs.
Dewey Decimal System.
You didn't have.
I was really good at that.
You didn't have a computer that you could look it all up on. You had to go through the little cards,
Card
and you
index file,
you
right.
had to know the
Dewey Decimal.
topics so that you would access exactly
that.
what it was you were looking for, and then you had to know how everything related so that you could look up other topics with the cards. It wasn't as easy as using a computer. But anyway, I had these books, so what I did was, when we ended up having eBay, I bought the books from my bibliography online so that I would have them as a resource, because a lot of stuff gets destroyed. And my paper was on 17th century Boston, but really what it was a separation of church and state. And people get confused as to what that means. But I spent a lot of time in that library. And a lot of people will talk about, religion and government and all this other stuff. And the purpose of the separation of church and state was so that the state wouldn't have a federally or locally owned church.
Well,
Church
as it-
was independent on its own, but could advise the state on what to do and what not to
As
do.
originally constituted, the First Amendment is not separation of church and state. It's an anti-establishment provision. It says that Congress shall make no law with respect to the establishment of religion or prevent the free exercise thereof. Because
That's almost an exact quote.
it is an exact
He's
quote.
very good. He's very
All
good
right?
at this.
And I'm telling you that has nothing to do with separation of church and state. It means that the United States government will not establish a state religion. That's all it means, okay?
Right, yeah.
And the proof of that is that Massachusetts had a state religion until 1826.
What was it?
So if it was unconstitutional, they would have done something about it in the 36 years in the intervening time that the federal constitution was adopted.
What was the official religion?
The
of
official religion of Massachusetts was what we would call today Calvinism or Congregationalism, okay? Now, it didn't mean that you had to go to church. What it meant was that you were taxed, okay? So every tax-paying citizen, which in those days was people who owned land.
2 minutes.
Okay, had to pay a tax to fund the Massachusetts state religion. And then in 1826, Massachusetts abolished the state religion, okay? So the First Amendment never was supposed to mean separation of church and state. It was supposed to mean the federal government can't require you to belong and support a state religion. That's what it means.
But it didn't
okay?
mean that either, that the churches couldn't advise those that were in
Correct.
office.
Nor prevent the free exercise
Yeah,
thereof.
so a lot of the
Yeah.
discussion about
Right.
separation of church and state was not referencing the First Amendment. It was referencing literally nothing.
Exactly.
Except the letter that was sent that said that, the government could not establish a religion.
Right.
Yeah, people get it backwards. So we're going to go to break within a
It's been lied
minute.
about for so long, that's
And
why.
then when we come
Hey,
back,
nothing like confusion.
we're
Right.
going to talk about a whole pile of odds and ends of things, and we're going to talk about tariffs. So I hope that,
Something I know something about.
yes, we want to make sure we do that. Maybe I'll suggest that Sam and I do one of his shows and talk about tariffs. That way we can.
No, you need 10 minutes to talk about tariffs.
We'll see how
Oh,
it
no,
goes.
now with the tea.
I'm not doing 30
Have
minutes
a
of my
little
show on
song
tariffs.
with tariffs.
He's
Put
only got
everybody to
30
sleep.
minutes. I'm not going to sing.
You can only make tariffs interesting for so long.
Yeah, I don't find it interesting at all.
They're not interesting. I'm with Evelyn. Not interested.
It's a negotiating tool.
We'll be back. Thanks.
Welcome back to City Life. I'm Evelyn Thoren. I'm your host for the next 59 minutes, roughly. Sam Chase is my co-host this morning. Bob Hoey has some work to do, so he's not with us this morning, and we wish him well. We have Glenn back. Not Glenn
Sitting in the
Beck,
middle
but,
to
or
keep you
back,
two
but Glenn
guys
Thoren.
away from each other.
And,
We have no
but he
work
has
to do.
returned. And that our original guest, Amanda, had some babysitting thing. She has a little girl. And
Motherly duties.
Yes, and couldn't go to daycare because she's sick, and we hope everybody gets well.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Which is unfortunate. So we'll reschedule. She's really excited about being on, so it isn't as if there was an issue with that. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on. In the first hour, we talked about a whole pile of odds and ends of things. Magazines, cars, corned beef and cabbage.
So what you're saying is we got all the odds and ends out of the way, and now we're going to talk about serious stuff, right?
The meat of
Okay,
the...
all right.
No,
no
they're
pun
back to food
intended.
again. No, it's the
talked
food
about
part,
meat,
the
yeah,
food part
right.
is done.
We certainly can talk about all kinds of stuff like
Yeah.
that. But one of the things that, even before we started the show at 6 a.m., that we brought up is all of the misunderstanding about tariffs. One of the things that I did send, John, can you get it off the text? I sent you a picture. I did not verify the numbers, but I thought it would be a jumping off point for the topic. If you can't get it, while these guys talk, I'll send it to you on Messenger if you can't put it up. It's the one that's got all the tariffs. It's a picture. So somebody had on Facebook had copied, but there was no documentation of some of the tariffs that Canada has currently in place or prior to this, I would call a tariff war, that on this country. And a lot of people do not understand exactly what is going on, and they are using it politically to try to support their position.
It's being demagogued, like everything else.
Right, and they're not defining it. They're not telling you what it is,
Oh, Sam, what's demagogue?
and they're trying to they're trying to
We're
create
defining
fear.
demagogue now?
I want to know what Sam means when he uses the word demagogue.
Demagoguing an issue means politicizing it in a negative way.
Understood. F, there's
Okay.
your thing.
So someone had posted this.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick statement on when you see something like this posted, oftentimes it's not all accurate, because I looked up some of these tariffs, and some were right and some were wrong, so always take everything you see that looks like this with a grain of
Yeah,
salt.
you have to
Check-
investigate.
Check it out.
Right.
Right, and that's why I
But this
thought
does
that-
give you an idea.
Right, I thought this would be a starting point where I don't know what the source is of this, but I certainly can look it up while you guys have some conversation.
Oh, it's good. Thank you, Ev.
And you can see that this is from Canada, so it's not as if we're paying nothing to get stuff from Canada. And when you have a president that says we're getting ripped off by these countries, yes, we are.
This is what the Canadians pay.
Okay.
In addition, when they import stuff from the United States. And so, tariffs in general are just set up to help preserve the industries in the country
They're-
that sets up the tariffs.
Absolutely 100% correct. They are protectionist measure
So I guessed right?
to protect the local industry. So if
Right.
if Canada imposes a 155% tariff on milk product coming from the United States into Canada, okay, that means that the end recipient of the milk product in Canada, assuming that entire cost is passed along to the buyer, okay, that product is going to be 155% more expensive than it otherwise would be without the tariff, okay? And the reason that Canada does that is to protect their dairy industry.
Right,
okay?
exactly.
That's what tariffs are designed to do. They are a protectionist measure, okay?
Why do the Germans throw a big tax on American cars? To protect the German car
They don't-
manufacturers.
Yeah, exactly. That's,
It's no
that-
more complicated than that.
Very simple. Very, very simple.
So when President Trump says, well, I tell you what, why don't we just do reciprocal tariffs? Whatever you tariff us, we'll tariff you. Now, you have to stop and take a minute and think about that for a second. Doesn't that seem fair? Well, it may not seem fair if you're trying to bolster the industry in your own country, but for free trade, for international trade, yeah, that's not a bad idea. So if somebody puts a 100% tariff on our products, we put a 100% tariff on their similar product, and then the two countries look at each other and say, this is ridiculous. It's costing each of us so much more money to buy products that our people want. Why don't we just take the 100%, make it zero? You sell your cars, we'll sell our cars, and see how that works out. There's reasons why you might not want to do that, but having reciprocal tariffs at least puts the issue on the table.
So, Glenn, what were the tariffs before 1992?
Oh, I've memorized all of those, John. For whatever you can think of.
I can tell you, okay?
Sam knows.
Okay, so I don't want to sound like a know-it-all, but what I am
But
going to...
you do know a lot.
Well, I know something about this subject because I managed...
Then please tell us.
Yeah, I managed export-import operations for almost 30 years.
But you didn't set the tariffs.
I did not set the
Okay,
tariffs. So
right.
I understand. So NAFTA stands for North American Free Trade, and it became effective in 19...
Agreement, yep.
In 19...
And Marty Mann was the deciding vote.
In 1989 was when it started, and it was a agreement among three countries, United States, Mexico, and Canada, okay? So the idea behind NAFTA was to equalize the trade among the three countries and to reduce the existing tariffs. So to answer this particular question, the tariff structure in place before NAFTA, generally the tariffs were higher, okay, than they are today, okay? And what North American Free Trade did was on certain product, not all product, on certain product, it lowered the tariffs among the three countries. So, for example, automobiles. And that's why NAFTA was enacted, by the way. It was pushed by the car companies, all right? A lot of people don't know this. And the idea was that we were sourcing parts from Mexico for cars. We were having some of our manufacturing done in Canada and also Mexico for vehicles. And the car manufacturers said, wait a minute, we don't want a situation where we've had our Canadian plant manufacturing Chevrolets, and then we got to bring them into the United States and pay a 15% tax. We don't want that. Okay, so the car company.
Bad for business.
Yeah, the car companies lobbied the United States government and said, put this NAFTA agreement in place so that when we move cars trans-border, Canada, Mexico, U.S., Mexico, and Canada, we're not paying any tax. And that's what NAFTA was.
Right.
They also, but it also included, it was primarily for automobiles, but they also included other product.
Yeah, washing machines,
But
things
not all
like that.
product.
But what they
Not all
tried to do was
Right.
look at the economies of both countries and equal out the tariffs that were being collected on similar products for car parts and
Correct.
cars. And Mexico makes car parts, Canada makes car parts. The best brake drums come
Yeah.
from Canada.
And it's all origin based. So for example, in order to get the preferential treatment, if you're bringing a car in from Canada to the United States, it's all based on what they call national or regional content. So if the Canadian plant sourced half of its parts from China, and those Chinese parts went into the car, it may not qualify 100% for the tariff reduction. Okay, it had to be substantially Canadian origin to get the benefit of the tariff. It's very complicated.
So
okay?
what is the most American car made in America today?
There's no such thing as a completely American.
No, not
sourced car.
completely. Not,
Toyota.
it's a Tesla.
Oh, Tesla.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the most popular car that's sold in the world today? From 2023, 2024, what car is that?
I don't know.
Tesla.
Tesla, good.
More Teslas are sold than Toyotas are on specific models. It's a Model Y.
Even with people trying to set them on fire?
Yeah, so that's a whole part of the other discussion, but let's just finish
Can I
up.
just stop on that point for 1 second, Sam?
Sure.
There are, I believe, 8 cameras on my wife's car.
8 what, cameras?
8 cameras.
Wow.
I'm surprised there aren't more.
If
Okay.
you light on, well, okay, maybe there's 64 cameras, okay?
There's a
I
lot.
can
But there's
ask.
8 cameras that are live all the time.
Why
And
do
if
you
you
need-
set, if you set a Tesla on fire, it's in their cloud.
Yeah, there's a pretty good picture of
Why-
who you are.
Why do you
Beautiful
need,
picture of you setting the Tesla
why do you
on
need
fire.
8 cameras?
Because, a lot of people get their doors dented and
Does your
get
car
hit.
take questions, Sam? Does
Does-
your car take questions?
I don't think so.
Okay, Teslas don't take questions either. They're just, the cameras are just, there's a camera looking at you driving, there's a
They
camera.
just do it that way.
Well, they're also, hang on, cameras are used for, hands-free driving on Teslas.
All right, that makes sense.
So a lot of the cameras are just looking at the surroundings and determine,
Okay.
where you are positioned in the road, what's ahead of you, what's behind you, what's beside you.
I think you answered my question.
Okay,
Do
good.
they use
That's good.
cameras in order to have some calculation on how close you are? or
Oh,
something?
absolutely.
Oh, yeah, I would think so,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you have for instance, on the Tahoe, you have the vibration that you're too close to something, or you have the light blinking on your rearview mirrors that you're too
Unbelievable.
close to something. Is there a camera in there?
On the Tahoe?
Yeah.
No, it's an ultrasonic sensor.
Okay.
It sends out a sound wave to
like radar,
determine.
right?
Well, it's sort of a radar. It's a
Yeah.
sound radar, not an RF radar. But there's a whole lot of stuff going on with cars and getting very complicated.
Oh.
But back to the tariff issues. President Trump is using tariffs as a negotiating tool to try and balance out the trade between countries because the bottom line intention of all this is to bring more manufacturing jobs back to the United States.
Correct.
Bring companies back to the United States. If you build it in the United States, you don't have a tariff. If you build it in the United States, sell it in the United States, there's no tariffs. So automatically, you're saving a lot of money on the car cost to the consumer. Now, right now,
Plus you're saving on distribution and transportation costs.
Of course.
Because you're not having to shuttle parts back and forth overseas.
well, that's why TSMC is going to be building a plant in the United States.
Right.
2 reasons, actually. One is because there will be some tariffs on chips coming from Taiwan. The second reason is their major manufacturing facility is in Taiwan. And so the important part of that is if something happens to that facility, all the highly complex integrated chip manufacturing in the world goes down the toilet. And TSMC as a company doesn't want to have that.
Well, the bottom line is that foreign countries in general, relative to the United States, foreign countries in general have adopted policies to protect their industries.
Yes.
We have not.
They're called tariffs.
Yeah, Well, and other things too.
Yeah, other things,
okay?
but, you know,
We have not.
content.
We have not. We have, over the last 50 years, we have in fact developed a policy to disfavor and disincentivize U.S. companies from staying in the U.S. And the reason it started was labor costs, okay? Because labor costs were, and still are in many cases, significantly less in foreign countries than they are in the
And will
United
be
States.
for a while.
And the larger corporations said, if we want to get a competitive edge, we're going to manufacture overseas and pay a lot less for labor. Okay? And at the same time they were doing that, they lobbied their politician friends in Washington and said, look, we're going to do this, but it won't work if you're going to tariff us. So don't tariff us when we send the stuff back into the United States.
That's right.
And that's what we did. So we've had a policy for the last 50 years, and this is what the president is talking about. We've had a policy for the last 50 years of disincentivizing our industry, of staying in the United States and incentivizing them for going overseas, and we help that by not charging tariffs when the product comes
Well,
back.
let me
That's
ask
what
you,
we've
Let
done.
me ask you enlightened characters over
Yeah.
there. If Canada dropped all their tariffs,
Mm-hmm.
there'd be no tariffs against Canada. That's my understanding of what Tom's
Say that again?
Correct.
If Canada said, okay, that tariff we have on your cars,
Yep,
gone. No more tariffs on any American products.
coming into Canada, right.
From
If
Canada.
Canada dropped that, the United States would drop all the tariffs against Canada. That's
Well,
my takeaway from what Trump
That's
said.
correct.
Yep.
But we have right now,
Why
we,
doesn't any news media outlet put that out there?
because they,
Because they don't want you to know that.
two reasons. They, number one, they don't understand. They don't understand. And number two, to Glenn's point, it doesn't fit
Doesn't fit the narrative,
It does
yes.
not fit the narrative, and the narrative is Trump bad.
John,
okay?
John, you know,
That's
over the
narrative.
past, since what has he been? He hasn't even been president for 2 months yet.
Yeah.
Right? So the narrative has been, you know, Trump's going to cause higher prices, you know, unemployment's going to go up, you know, all these bad, it just goes on and on and on. And I see these memes on Facebook, drive me bananas. Oh, by the way, yesterday information came out. Real honest to God information. Guess what? Inflation is down, egg prices are down, gas prices are down, mortgages are going down, unemployment is going down. You know, so all these things were the exact opposite.
Did you see any of that on the national
No,
media?
none
you
of it at
didn't?
all.
Oh,
But, you know, the
okay.
narrative is
Checking.
Trump's going to screw all these things up. And yesterday the data came in and said, guess what? They're all going in the right direction. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to stay going in the right direction, but 0.2%, you know, inflation on a month-to-month basis means, 2.4% for the year. You know, and so
That's good.
Well,
that's good.
Another little point that the media doesn't cover is this. Okay?
But the liberal
When you go-
media
when you
wants
go-
a different narrative.
When you go and buy your Audi or you buy your BMW or your Genesis car, that's money that's leaving the United States and it's never coming back here. When you go buy a Toyota that's made in this country, you go buy a Chevy that's made in this country, a Lincoln Continental, a Ford that's made in this country, that money stays in the country.
Yep.
If you buy a Ford that's made in Canada, it's gone to Canada, and that money's...
Whose workers are getting paid? What workers are making that money?
So that is not demonstrated to the American public.
No, it
why
isn't.
No.
Trade
No.
is important.
That is correct. And
President Trump wants American workers to be paid for goods that are bought by
It
Americans.
should be explained to the
Well,
American public that this is what is...
We just did.
But he's not.
well,
You
because-
just did, but he should.
But the president, he's just not that articulate when it comes to this stuff. What he needs is, he needs a spokesman out there that
Yes,
will
and it's
explain
not
it.
Elon Musk, because he
Okay.
doesn't.
No, and
he
Elon
can't
Musk
well
is,
either.
well, he's less articulate than Trump is. Okay?
Yeah.
So the thing is, and the point to be made, and I think a lot of people missed it, it was stated earlier on in the administration, where the president sat down with the Prime Minister of Canada, the former Prime Minister Trudeau, and they had a discussion, and allegedly, I mean, I wasn't there, okay, so this is information I'm getting third hand, but allegedly, the conversation was that if the U.S. market for Canadian goods dried up, Canada would be economically devastating.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
So think about it.
Canada cannot survive at its current standard of living economically without being able to export their goods to the United States. If they can't do that anymore, they're done, okay? However, the reverse is not true. If the United States is not able to export its goods to Canada, it would cause some pain.
Ripple.
It would cause some
Speed bump.
pain, but we would be okay. Okay, that's the difference. So to Glenn's point, that's where you start the negotiation.
Yeah, and that's what's called, people should know, that's what's
Right.
called leverage.
Exactly.
You know, when you have leverage, you
Right.
can have a rational discussion for the benefit of the United States.
Exactly. So the president, whoever he is, doesn't matter, or she, sits down with the Canadian head of state and says, look, if you can't ship your product at all into our country, you guys are dead, okay? And because they're behind closed doors and not on TV.
Yeah, those are the opening discussions.
The premier says, Mr. President, you're right.
Right.
If we can't
So-
do that,
so the point
we're
is,
dead.
We don't want them
Right.
dead.
So-
we want them to be
And-
very
right.
successful.
And then the next thing that the president says, and if we can't send our stuff to you, it hurts us a little, but we're not dead. Okay, let's continue the conversation. All right, that's how it's done, and that's what we're doing. Trump isn't doing it; his people are doing it.
Of course,
okay,
yeah, right.
So that's the discussion we had. What you hear on the media and what you see on the media, the grandstanding, okay, is theater. It's total theater. That is not representative of the conversations that are occurring behind closed doors, okay? So,
That's what we're here for, to straighten that out.
Exactly.
So you
All right.
understand what is actually going on and not
And-
listening to these stupid people in the
Idiots.
media that are giving you
Idiots.
agenda documents.
idiots, okay? And it infuriates me because all it does,
And me too.
all it does is make people scared.
Fear.
And angry. And
Fear.
I'm going to give you a good example of that, and I'm not going to mention a name. So a very good friend of ours who is totally bought into all this nonsense about how we're becoming a fascist society and all this other stuff, received a communication.
From the Democratic National Committee,
No,
perhaps?
from
Okay.
the Republican National Committee.
Oh, okay.
And it was a fundraising letter. So if you're on the mailing list of the Democratic or Republican National Committees, you're going to get these fundraising letters from time to time, asking for money. So this friend got and why she got it, I don't know, because they're not Republicans. But I guess maybe if you're registered unenrolled, you get these things too. So she got it. She called up and she said, I need your advice. And I said, what's the advice? And she said, I got this thing from, it looks like the Republicans, and it wants me to send money, and what should I do? And I said, well, do you want to send money to them? And she said, no. And I said, well, then throw it in
Then
the
don't send
wastebasket.
money, yeah.
I said, throw the thing in the waste. Well, I can't do that. Well, why not? Well, because I'm afraid I might go to jail. I said, what? All right, now this is.
Did it say that in the letter?
No. This is a very intelligent person we're talking about. And because.
That's crazy.
And I said, where are you getting that? And she said, well, it talks about, they're using the word mandate. I said, throw it in the wastebasket. I said, it is a fundraising letter. But the point of my story is that this person has listened so much to the left-wing media that they have
There you go.
scared her silly.
It's the
And
fear
when- And when
tactics.
she
It's
gets
all
a
fear
letter
tactics.
from the Republican National Committee, she feels that if she doesn't do what the letter says, she's going to be put in prison. And we're talking about a person with a master's degree, an
See,
educated person, okay? And this is
We
what
gotta
they-
fix that
this is-
nonsense.
This is what they've done, okay?
Yep.
This is what they've
Well, what
done.
are they going to run on? They don't have any plans. They don't
it's-
have anything to offer.
it's
all about
outrageous.
fear. You know, I keep hearing this stupid stuff about, well,
Right.
they're gonna cancel Medicare, they're gonna, cancel Social Security. and stuff.
Ridiculous.
They've been doing that for 20 years, and
more-
it's a
more-
lie.
I thought
More
when you
than
bring
20
that
years.
up, I thought it was very interesting. There was an
Yeah.
article that was talking about the cost of living raise that's going to go to Social Security recipients.
Oh, good.
It's a little.
I don't
It doesn't
care.
matter. It's not
I'm a
going down.
Social
It's going
Security
up.
recipient. I'll
So
take
are
it.
we.
So am I.
Yeah. But when they're talking about all of these things, you need to do the research, and people are lazy. They want to be spoon-fed everything. And when you do that, then that creates fear because you have
Well, you
less
get
information to
spoon-fed
make a
fear.
decision. Well, true.
point.
But you need to be checking things out, kind of like with that photograph that I had sent to John from Facebook. And we put up it early in this, what was it, around 7 o'clock. And, is this true? Isn't it true? You can look it all up. We put it out there not because we want to sensationalize it, but we want to challenge you to actually maybe do something about advancing your
I'll go.
amount of information.
I'll go further than that, Evelyn. Okay, what you hear on this show from me and from Glenn and from Evelyn, don't take our word for it. Listen to what we say and check it out.
Right. Most of the time, we're gonna be right. Sometimes we're gonna be wrong, but those are very rare.
I usually don't advance my opinion unless I have done my research, okay? But I make mistakes too. So if you hear me say something and you don't think it sounds right, then go and do your own
But
research.
Sam, you're not making mistakes intentionally
Well, that's true.
to confuse people
Well, we're not
and
being
create
specific.
fear. But
Correct.
But the Democrats and the news media are making mistakes intentionally to confuse people. Well, we're coming to the end of Social Security. The Doge movement is going to cancel Social Security. Well, wait a minute. If you listen, Doge is going to try and find any fraud that's taking place in Social Security. And there's no fraud in Social Security. You want to bet?
There's
You know?
fraud in everything.
And same thing with Medicare.
There's
Right,
fraud
so
in
one of the
everything.
things that was out there was that when you die, the funeral home or the hospital or whoever it is, notify Social Security that you're dead, so you no longer
It's
will
not
be.
whatever it is, Ev, okay? When your death certificate's filed with the local government, it's an electronic death certificate. Social Security is notified immediately.
Right.
Yes. And
And do you get your
But I-
$255 benefit?
do you get money?
There's a 200,
Only if you have a surviving spouse. See, when you,
is it still
okay,
255?
typically, okay,
Yeah.
that your spouse goes off to heaven. You're getting two checks. I get my check, her check's bigger than mine. Whoever dies, the larger check continues coming to the
That's
survivor.
right, yep.
One time only, you're gonna get an extra $255.
That's the death benefit.
And that's been a death benefit since 1955. So that's what happens with Social Security. When the larger check continues to come, your check, the smaller check stops. And first time out there, you get $255 death benefit. End of Social Security.
Right, so that's the facts about no longer receiving Social Security benefits if you're dead. So what happens is your Social Security number can appear on the black market. Somebody picks it up, somebody hacks into something, they get it, they apply, and then Social Security then begins, because there's no audit of it.
They check the roster.
So then that money now will go to whoever it is that's hacked into the Social Security number. And that's what they're looking at. And that's why when you had Elon Musk make a comment about people that are 150 and 200 years old getting Social Security checks, those people aren't getting the checks.
Wait a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
Those people aren't getting the checks. It's the people that have hacked into their accounts and are using the Social Security number that are getting the checks.
So that's clearly fraud, but what we don't know and what they're trying to dig out is how many of these people, or how many of these Social Security numbers that were attached to people that are over 150, over 110, or whatever the age is, over 200 years old. These Social Security numbers are for people that are supposedly that old and they're still on the roster. The question is, how many checks are going out to these social security numbers. I don't have that information right now. I haven't heard that information, but it's certainly something I check on. The thing that's inexcusable, that it just drives any normal person bananas, is why the heck is there millions of people that are way beyond normal lifespan still on the roster?
Still in the database, right.
It's ridiculous. They're using computers from the 1950s or something, I don't know, but it should never happen. So you've got to fix those things first while you're trying to dig out who's cashing checks for dead people.
Let's bring this down to a simpler level that I think might be easier for people to understand. And I think most people know this that have followed news recently. We all know that there are cities and towns in Massachusetts that have voter lists, that have voters on the lists that shouldn't be there.
Are no longer
Okay.
with us, or
They
have
either-
moved,
They've
or
either
whatever.
died
Yeah.
or they moved. So the question is, how diligent is your administrative unit in keeping that data up to date? Now, some towns are very good at keeping their voter lists current and accurate. Other cities and towns are not. Okay, it all depends on who's working in the office and what the focus is, okay?
So in Chelmsford, for example.
So if we have a problem in Chelmsford, and I'm not saying we do, because I think
Well, why don't we?
because they have one person who's dedicated to maintaining that function, okay? And that's 80% of her job is to make sure that that voting list is current and accurate.
Do they
and
use the-
and she works on it
Do they
every
use
day,
they use a
okay?
census we fill out every year to correlate with the
They
voting
do,
list?
but that's only one of the tools they use.
Okay.
So in Chelmsford, it's pretty accurate, okay? In other communities, maybe not so.
Not so much.
So if we have, on a local level, if some of our data is inaccurate, what do you suppose it is on the national level? when we're
Millions
talking
and millions.
Millions and millions of people. Of course, the databases aren't accurate. Of course,
So
they're not,
that brings us to Evelyn's favorite part of the show.
okay?
20 minutes of announcements.
Oh, good.
The clock
You
is
guys can
ticking.
go and
Yeah.
Have a nap. Evelyn's going to bake a cake. If you want an announcement of this show, just send me a text message. We'll put it out there.
I'll take a look at this stuff.
Coming up this Saturday, we got the State Representative Rodney Elliott and the Bridge Club of Greater Lowell present St. Patrick's Day breakfast honoring Tom Shanahan.
Smells like coconut.
It's sold out. There's no more tickets. So if you want a ticket, you got to know somebody. Typical, but good for them. And we plan on being there on Saturday. Ned Tommy bought a table, so we're going to sit with Ned. And but if you want to donate to the Bridge Club, great organization. By the way, your mics are hot.
Probably at your grandparents.
Evelyn,
Could be.
your mics are still going to be hot.
Okay, sorry.
Just so you know. So, hope to see, I hope to see you on Saturday. I know it's going to be, I'm going to try to put it on Facebook Live, and I know my friend Gary Frascarelli is going to put it on WCAP, so we'll see what happens. You'll be able to listen to it at home if you want to.
That's okay.
If you have a census, if your town sent you a census, send it back in. It means more money for the town. It'll say, oh, you can't vote. Well, the more important thing is, the federal people want the number of people living in your town, and they send you money to match that. So send it back in, help your town out, make more money. Tony Archinsky, nice guy, running for re-election out there in delightful Dracut. He's having a party Sunday, March 16th,
It's colorful.
noon to 3 p.m. at the Primo Pizza in delightful Dracut. This is the Pawtucketville Diner, Saturday, March 17th, it's Monday. They're going to have a wonderful breakfast there, so head over there for a scrumptious breakfast. 6th annual Guy Constantine Shamrock Dinner, Monday, the 17th of St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 4 to 8 p.m. All tickets sold at the door. Just show up. The Tingsboro Sportsman's Club is at 90 Westford Road in Tingsboro. It's going to be a delicious time. I hope to see you over there. Job fair. If you're in between occupations, you want to try a new occupation, free job fair. They want you to register, so take your phone, put it in camera mode, and zero it on this QR code, and you can register. But March 25th and 26th, all those trades, companies, you want a job in finance and insurance, bingo. They're going to have a company there that's offering jobs. So take a look at it. If you have a kiddo in your family, in between jobs or looking for different careers, time well spent to get down to this. It's going to be 2 days, March 25th, 26th in downtown Lowell, 33 Kearney Square, Middlesex Community College Cafe. Eric Gitch is having a party, fundraiser, Thursday, March 27th, 5:30 to 7 p.m. at the Mount Pleasant Country Club, Mount Pleasant Golf Club, and a good time to be had by all. I hope to see you up there. Today is the 13th of March. Lowell Senior Center is proud to have lunch 7 days a week, unless it's a holiday, 7 days a week. Today's the 13th, so today we have roast pork loin. Head over there around 10:30, plunk down your $2. If you don't have your $2, just tell the gal you don't have the money, and she'll give you a ticket for free. So everybody's welcome to eat today. Get over there around 10:30, 11 o'clock, the feed bag comes out, and you're walking out of there at 11:30. Health Fair in Tewksbury Senior Center coming up on April 9th from 1 to 4 p.m. If you want to be a vendor, just be in touch with Susan Timmons. If there's something ailing you and you want a free chat with a medical professional, you should consider going to this. Danielle McFadden, she's running for school committee citywide.
Got my vote.
And she's having a campaign fundraiser April 3rd, 5 to 8 p.m. at the Mount Pleasant Golf Club, 141 Staple Street. Spring, if you want to, got some time on your hands, you want to volunteer, Spring Volunteer Fair is going to be at St. Anne's Episcopal Church, 8 Kirk Street. And it's going to be Saturday, April 5th from 9 to noontime. And Evelyn sent me this guy. This is out in charming Chelmsford. I didn't know you guys had trash out there, Evelyn, but I'm surprised. Whoops. Coming up next, okay. Center Elementary, McCarthy Schools, PTO fund. It's a fundraiser?
Of course, everything in Chelmsford's a fundraiser.
E-waste and junk. You can, so you can empty the trash in your computer and send it a donation. Is that what you want us to do, Evelyn? At any rate, Saturday, May 3rd, 8 to noon p.m. $60 for a carload, $85 for a van, a truckload, and they accept electronics, outdoor items like snow blowers. That's pretty cool. You want to get rid of your snow blower, bring it up there. And appliance and household lights, so get rid of that old fridge. No oil, fuel, glass, or plastic toys. Got a question? Email give junk to us at Gmail. That's a pretty clever email address, way down the bottom here. So you got a question, they'll be happy to email you back. Adrian, please join for our second annual Adrian Kimborowitz Memorial Fundraiser, Saturday, May 3rd at the Bunting Club. That's out in South Lowell. And they're going to have prizes there and a good time to be had by all. And a kiddo gone way before his time. Megan House, they help a lot of young women who are in trouble. They're going to have a fundraiser, the 11th annual Hope and Recovery Golf Tournament. So if you want to participate, those are the prices on there. Be in touch with the Megan House. They need your help. And Evelyn, that's the last announcement. Back over to you.
Well, welcome back after all that wonderful information that we just
Can
received.
you hear me now?
I'm certainly sure he can. On the media, the Patch, there is an article about the Department of Education downsizing and firing their employees, and over 1,000
Is it
individuals.
accurate?
I don't know. I didn't. I was just reading it while he was reading all of that stuff, and so what we need to do is to find out what it is. But within the article itself, it does say. So what happens to all of the money? Well, the money still comes in. It's just going to come in from a different department,
Exactly.
and that's what the article states. By the way,
So it is accurate. Well, hallelujah.
So far.
Hallelujah.
so it talks about
Half
all of
the
this.
employees have been dismissed.
So the employees are pretty much gone because you don't need them anymore. And it's not just in this state, it's in all of the states. And, some of them have been placed on administrative leave, which means they still get paid. And some of them have actually been fired, but the question is, when will they be finally terminated from their
But
positions.
what is totally irresponsible is the governor of our state making a statement yesterday that if we lose, and she said $2 billion, which I don't know if that's an accurate number or
can look
not.
it up.
Seems high, but
But that's
keep
what she
going.
said.
Yep.
She said, as a result of the actions taken at the federal level, downsizing the education department and so on, we could lose $2 billion worth of funding, she said, and if that happens, we can't make it up at the state level. Now, she knows, Maura Healey, whatever you think about her, she's a very smart person. She wouldn't be where she is if she weren't smart. She knows full well that that's not true.
Right.
She knows full well that that's not true.
But
That's
where's the fear?
That's a political
Where's the
statement.
fear?
Right. That's a political statement.
Where's the fear?
Well, the best question
Yeah.
you can ask anybody who's talking about it, stop right in their tracks. Can you name one person that you know that's been affected by this? And the answer is always no. Do you know anybody who was laid off? Well, no. Do you know anybody who didn't get paid? No. Then
Fear. It's all about fear.
you're right.
Why do we even have a Department of Education? You know when it started. You know why it was started. It was Jimmy Carter trying to do something for favoring the teachers unions.
Right.
And think about this logically. If X dollars, forget what the number X is given to the Department of Education to handle the issues that they're dealing with, sometimes it's subsidies for, food programs, sometimes it's additional programs to help needy students, whatever their need happens to be. But in order to do that, you've got a boatload of administrators in Washington in all these buildings that have to be paid for, doling out the money. They don't actually do anything with it. They just give it out.
They're brokers. It's a pass-through.
Right, they're brokers. So if you take away the middleman, which is what the Department of Education is the enormous middleman. I mean, you go to Washington, every Department of Education, buildings all over the place. They have to be maintained, paid for, electricity, everything else. If you take all that away, you actually have more money that you can give to the states.
Correct.
That's a huge difference.
Correct.
So anyway, as far as the, what's going on in Massachusetts, again, you can read this particular article. It does say that 10% of the money going into education does come from the federal government. But in the article, it's trying to give you the correct information.
Well,
and
I'm
it's
glad
not
to hear that.
misinformation.
Good.
Yeah.
And it does say that, that it doesn't say that all of the financing will stop. What it does say is that the employees will no longer be there. So the question is how they're going to be able to incorporate the jobs and the responsibilities that were for the dissemination of the funds into the other departments. And that goes also as far as the food program goes, because we do, which I found interesting, like for the first time in my life, that my grandchildren, if they want to get a lunch or even a breakfast in the Chelmsford Public Schools, they don't have to pay for it.
Correct. It's been that way since COVID. That
So-
started during COVID.
Yeah, and they...
And they kept it going, right.
how
Yeah.
good's the lunch?
I have no idea. I don't eat it. I think that-
My grandchildren, some days they take the school lunch, some days they don't. So it depends on what they're serving as to whether they like
Well,
the
if
food.
I was the lunch provider and I put out a meal and most of it went in the trash, I wouldn't make that meal again.
That makes sense.
It has to
Right,
be
yeah.
monitored. So- and
Common
there's-
sense.
But again, sometimes it's a matter of personal preference
Evelyn.
of the child.
If the kids aren't eating it, don't make it again.
Right, make
No,
something
I
else.
agree with you. I'm just saying that sometimes there's kids that really don't like certain types of food, so they're going to toss it.
So John, when you were growing up, I want to ask you this question because you're about the same age as the rest of us. Did you have personal preferences on the meals you wanted? If your mother served you a meal, you said,
Forget it.
I don't like this particular meal. We're throwing this one out. I mean, how'd that go?
You ate what was put on the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
You went
certainly
hungry.
did. You certainly
That
did.
was-
And also,
the way it was in my house.
fastest eater in most groups, because if you didn't eat fast, you didn't get your fair share.
Right.
It's in a larger family, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, if there weren't any seconds, you weren't getting any. You know, so,
I will go
I
one,
mean, what's going on?
I'll go one better than that. Again, it was the same thing in our age bracket, yeah. Your mother cooked the food, she
I'm
put
just
it on
going
the
to
table,
take
that
some
was
time to
it.
tell you this story about my favorite thing to eat. My mother would make, and she called it Chinese pie. I know we'll probably get taken off the air for saying such a thing. She had mashed potatoes with cooked hamburger in it, and she would pour cream corn on top. And I absolutely loved
That's-
it.
Is that an
That's what
Irish thing? Because my mother used to make that same dish.
I loved it.
Why
Was
would she
my-
call it a Chinese pie?
I forget what my mother
My mother
called it.
didn't take questions.
But
Did
my
you ask
mother
your mother
made
a lot
this-
of questions?
My
Mom, what
mother
do you
made the
call it?
same meal.
Oh, man.
So I loved it.
Yeah, I did
I
too.
couldn't get enough of it.
No leftovers that night.
Once I got married, my wife didn't make it that way.
Uh-oh.
So 20 years goes by. I said, what do you want for your birthday? I want Chinese pie the way my mother made it. So she makes it that way. It was lousy.
Uh-oh.
Shows you how your taste buds change. Another thing we used to have as kids would have a product called chuck steak. I don't know what it was, but my mother would give us chuck steak. Don't
Right,
care
because
what it
it's
is.
the cheapest cut.
Right, right.
So we had chuck steak. So I tell my wife, another birthday, I said, honey, I want chuck steak. She says, really? I said, yeah, I want chuck steak. Okay. She got it, and I said, okay, we can turn the page on that too. It's funny how your taste buds change.
Well, my father would do a chuck roast. It's got a lot of grizzle and fat and stuff in it. But how he did it still tasted good, no matter what. And if I did it today and cooked it in the slow cooker, it would still taste good. It's like a pot roast,
She recently, Ellen bought this
but it's too much money.
wicked lean hamburger she bought, and it was suggested she go back to what she was using. It was too dry.
Well, that's the problem. You need a certain amount of fat content.
I miss the greasiness of it all, so she went back to the old-fashioned stuff, and we're all happy.
So getting back to the little things that annoy me on the social media front, you know, another thing that I've been seeing a lot of lately is, you know, the illegal aliens in this country are big contributors to our society. They pay taxes, it goes into Social Security, they pay, $27 billion a year into the government treasury by paying taxes and everything else. And I'm saying, oh, yeah, that's a big number, that's interesting. And so I remembered a number previously that I wanted to look up. So they're paying in $27 billion, the illegal aliens that are paying taxes and Social Security, into Social Security. So how much does it cost America to support the illegal aliens that were brought into the Biden administration? Somewhere between 10 and 20 million. It costs America, a study that was done and presented to Congress, $185 billion of our tax money to support the illegal aliens that came into the country for housing, schooling, medical care, but they contribute $27 billion to our coffers. That math doesn't work.
Well, isn't our governor being chastised for, I'm going to give you $50 off your gas bill, and we're going to give $700 to each migrant? Our governor's being chastised for that right
That's
now.
Governor Healy, right? Because prices Governor Healy, you have to understand, she prevented several natural gas pipelines from coming into Massachusetts. And yet at the same time, she says she's in favor of all of the above sources of energy. Now, you can't have it both ways.
No, you can't.
If you're causing prices to be raised because supply is being diminished, you can't say, well, I'm for everything, but if you're spending too much, I'm going to give you $50 when, I just had oil tanks filled up for $1,040.
Yeah, the increase in your gas bill is not so much the cost of the gas itself. That's been relatively constant. It's the distribution fees, which go up because you've restricted the means of distribution.
Right.
And
If you can't get it,
it's
price goes up.
also 30 to 35% charge for mass save. So if you're a gas customer, you are helping to fund
Solar
the transition
panels,
to electric, right?
You're funding electric cars.
Correct, and that's why people are upset. Okay,
the hidden taxes.
it's a hidden tax. So if the and it's unfair because do people who heat their houses with oil do they fund Mass Save?
We don't know because we're not.
I
we
don't
have-
think so.
Well, I don't think so either, because.
No, yeah, I don't think
It's
so.
discriminatory?
Because oil companies, heating oil companies are not a
You
regulated.
you pay for the product,
They
right.
are not a regulated utility, it's a private thing. So if I buy my oil from Concord Oil Company,
Right.
that's a small company that distributes heating oil. You are not paying, as an oil customer, you're not paying for Mass Save. But
All the
if-
hidden taxes,
but
which
if
are a
you're-
lot.
If you're taking natural gas, you pay for it, right.
So, Emma, what do we have here today?
You have chocolate zucchini bread with
Mm.
a chocolate cream cheese filling, a dark chocolate ganache rolled in unsweetened coconut.
And the mice are gonna love the coconut on the floor, so thank you.
Well, you could have put it in.
That's a
an
heart
some
attack
traps
waiting to
down.
happen. Right.
Well,
So
it's
when you
unsweetened.
see this thing, you need more illegal aliens to contribute to the government welfare and social security and stuff. It's another one of these, mathematical scams. If it's costing you 180 to 190 billion dollars to support all these people, which is the number, and they're contributing 27 billion, 30 billion in taxes and stuff, that math doesn't work.
Well, I don't think it was intended for the illegal aliens or immigrants or whatever you want to call it that are currently in the country working to feed into the tax base to support all of the rest of them that are coming into the country to have that balance out. I mean, you've created something that I would never have tried to have a balance with because there isn't a balance. You have people that actually have jobs that are working, that are contributing, that will never see Social Security necessarily.
But there are a number of illegal folks that do not contribute to Social Security. I mean, many do,
Most don't.
but many do not,
but
because
if you have a
they're
20
they're under-the-table employees,
Right,
people.
and if you
Yeah,
have that number that says 27 billion, how are they documenting that if they're illegal?
Don't know.
So there's a lot of interesting questions that can come up as far as where do the numbers come from. The other problem that we had with, under the Biden administration with bringing all of these individuals into this country is that the resources that we had, if we had any, for our own citizens, and maybe those other illegal aliens that, are here working jobs, the problem is that you were giving more money to those people coming in than you were giving to the veterans and the homeless and the welfare recipients and all of the other stuff and all of the benefits. I mean, you were giving the hotel rooms, you were giving the food, whether if they didn't like the food, they threw the food away. And
But it wasn't a problem until they started to migrate these people from the southern states. So New York City has got a serious problem because of the numbers of folks that they have there, and you have to do something with them.
Right.
They have to be housed, they
well,
have
that's
to
why
be
they
fed.
sent them
Well,
north.
New York
Okay.
expected them all to be housed in Texas or
Well, right, so it's-
Arizona.
So when these sanctuary cities declared themselves sanctuary cities, the thought process, well, yeah, we can take 5 or 6 of these people and nobody's going to notice because, you know what, we're never going to get them because they're going to stay down south. But the minute the governors down south said, the only way we're going to get visibility nationally to this problem is to, transport
Bus
these
them
folks
somehow.
to other places and then let the other places say, whether or not they think this is a good idea. And that's what happened. So now all of a sudden, it's a problem in New York where it wasn't 4 years ago. And it's a problem in Boston where it wasn't 4 years ago.
Well, and also Chicago
And
and
all these
Boston
other-
doesn't keep track of
all-
everybody's
all
a
these other
citizen in
places.
Boston. They don't keep track of anybody.
all these other
and
places.
and they do a disservice to everybody else that's just trying to live here and
Just
exist.
soaking up your tax dollars.
And of course, there are people whose politics, they believe that there shouldn't be a concept of nationality. I mean, we saw this years ago that some cities wanting to make people who aren't citizens vote, okay?
Right.
And,
Some still do.
right,
DeSantis, fly a bunch of people up to Cape Cod.
Martha's Vineyard.
Martha's Vineyard, yep.
That definitely
Why
got,
didn't he keep doing it? It royally ticked off the other side.
Let me ask you this, John. How long did those people stay on Martha's Vineyard? Do you know?
Less than 24 hours.
Yeah, 48 hours. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And let me tell you
They
what
were out of there so
yeah,
fast.
and let me tell you what they did. Okay, because I know.
Well, the problem is, Sam, we don't know who the they are.
Well, let me tell you what. Yes, let me tell you what the state did. Okay, and it was Charlie Baker. All right. When the folks came up to Martha's Vineyard, and I know Martha's Vineyard because we've spent a lot of time down there on vacation. Martha's Vineyard has a lot of places, they have a lot of land, and they have buildings that are quite large and can accommodate large populations on a temporary basis. So when the folks came up from Florida, what did the local people do in order to dramatize the point? They picked just about the smallest building they could find in the town of Edgartown.
Why would they do
And
that?
they put all those people, and it's the Episcopal Church. It's right in the center of town. The Episcopal Church has a parish hall that can hold about 50 people.
Are the pews padded?
Nobody knows.
Are the pews padded?
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
You can sleep better on a
Yes.
padded pew.
No, but the parish house will hold about 50 people. Now, there are several buildings in Edgartown that would have accommodated those folks very nicely because they're big. But the smallest building was deliberately chosen so that when the cameras came in, it looked like a horrible, crowded situation.
Right.
It was all theater. It was all drama, and it was done on purpose because they didn't need to do that. And as a side note, President Obama has a multi-acre, large home in Edgartown. So those folks could have gone to President Obama's place. There was plenty of room.
Oh, yeah.
But they
It wasn't
did-
being used.
They did not go there. They shoehorned
So
them all
it's-
into this little
It's all about
parish
the
house.
all about the optics. All about the
Exactly.
optics. I want to throw another optic thing in
Exactly.
very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And I just found out about this recently because it bothers the heck out of me,
Mm-hmm.
is that the astronaut that was stranded up in the space station had the opportunity to be rescued by Elon Musk months ago, many months ago, but Biden wouldn't let him do it.
Why?
But because it would look too good for President Trump and Elon Musk to have Musk rescue these astronauts while Biden was still president. And one of the astronauts says it's 100% true that Biden wouldn't let Musk send up a rescue rocket months ago.
One of the astronauts actually said that?
Yeah, it actually said that. I checked that twice, and I'm going, what? So the launch yesterday was scrubbed. The rescue launch yesterday was scrubbed because they had a hydraulic indicator that was indicating a problem. So it may go off today or tomorrow, but he is going to rescue them
How long is it
because
gonna-
Biden isn't president anymore.
How long
Can
is it
you
gonna-
imagine leaving people in space because you didn't want the optics to look bad?
I
Well, I
don't-
guess the question would be, considering the fact of how many of his signatures were stamped, whether or not he even knew anything about it.
Yeah, was he running the country? They use the auto pen. You know what the auto pen is? It's
Yeah.
automatic.
Spoke
But-
about that yesterday, and the response was, they all use the auto pen.
I'd like to know how many of
Not
Trump's
that
signatures
often. Not
are
every-
auto. I want to know.
Do you ever see President Trump sign anything? You bet you did, because every executive order is signed by him.
He does it every day. You can watch it every day on
Special
Forbes News.
pens, he has a special pen made for that.
Yep, it's more like a magic marker.
Well,
you know.
they use,
Yeah.
he has multiple pens, because when he's done, he gives them out to people who are in the room.
Yeah, it's
So-
like a big magic marker, because you want to be able to see his signature. It's
Well,
not
you
a,
don't have any trouble
it's not a
seeing it.
John
He's a-
Hancock
He's a
signature. but-
showman. He's a showman.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Right.
Big time.
Well, that's, yeah,
How's
and
Sleepy Joe doing? What's Sleepy Joe doing these days?
He's probably sleeping.
And
who knows?
How about Kamala?
she's thinking about
She's running
running for
for-
governor
yeah, she's
of
gonna-
I haven't seen
California.
her on any video, so how would we know this?
She's been on a few. Well, people close to her are speculating that's one of her future ambitions, is to be governor
If
of
she- and if she
California.
runs,
I
Sure.
haven't seen her on any video talking about that.
Yeah, she's been on a couple.
I've
She
seen
hasn't been
it.
talking
I've
about
seen
it.
If she runs, she'll win.
California,
That's my opinion. If
Down
she
the tubes.
If she runs, she'll win.
Like you said, California.
well, California, a lot of people are PO'd about the Palisades fire. That was the Llewellyns, that was the Belvedere section of town that burned to the ground. And Hydrants weren't working. Firemen weren't working.
Not
and
good.
Reservoirs were empty.
I listen to a radio station called KFI. It's in Los Angeles. If I'm stuck at my desk, I got KFI on listening to the jargon out in California. And it's terrible how they're going, it wasn't my fault. I was off. I was off that day. I was on vacation that day.
Yep. You know how that works? 2 minutes.
And Lowell had a fire the other day over by Fort Hill, by Lowell Cemetery.
That was bad.
And despite broken hydrants, they put the fire out. Bam, done. No screwing around at Lowell.
Good.
They get the job done.
And they got tanker trucks, which is very good.
Glad to hear it.
Yes, and then your mayor of LA fired the fire chief because the fire chief basically told the truth on camera.
Can't do that.
And fire chief tried to get her job back. Couldn't do it. Couldn't get.
Because of the
Two
city
courts.
council.
2 courts.
Yeah, city council, all Democrats.
But the Democrats will win because that's what they do. You don't have enough people, currently anyway, in California that know enough, that know all of the information to say, I don't like this. There's a lot of giveaway programs.
Yeah, give me free stuff, you got my vote.
Yeah, and people don't want to work. There's a lot of interesting things going on out there.
Why are
which is
the
unfortunate.
gasoline prices so high in California?
It's all tax. It's all tax on gas. If the cost of gasoline was zero, the cost of the product was zero, it'd still be $4 a gallon.
So it's high. It's a high.
It's a higher tax rate?
High state.
So we're going to
tax.
run out of time in about 15 seconds here. Thank you very much for getting up
Glad
extra
to be
special
here.
early for me.
Every time he
Thanks,
comes
Sam.
here, he cranks me up. I can't stand.
Well, we'll continue this tomorrow night when we get together.
Yeah.
And so we hope that everybody will join tomorrow. You had, we don't have any special guests with Cliff. So stay safe, everybody. Hope you enjoy your weekend. And we will see you next Thursday, but join City Life and Dawn Patrol tomorrow morning. Stay safe.
I'm trying to figure who's coming tomorrow, but it ain't coming.
Yeah, I want to watch the launch.
Tomorrow, we don't have any guests tomorrow.
I
When's
think
it?
we're
The
off
launch is
the air.
today.
I think Cliff, but
Yeah,
we're
they
still
said
on.
it was today, right?
Yeah,
We're
it was
still on
yesterday
Facebook.
they tried to launch, but they're going to try and
No,
do
what
it
happened
today.
is we're still
They had
on.
one hydraulic valve that was a
Makes no
problem.
difference.
Well, I'm glad they didn't
Thanks.
launch.
See you tomorrow.
Take care, everybody.
They have sensors on everything.
They have sensors on the sensors.
Yeah,